History has produced many powerful families, but few names inspire the same fear, suspicion, and fascination as one, the Borgias. To some, they were brilliant rulers who modernized Italy. To others, they were the darkest symbol of corruption in the Renaissance. A family accused of poisoning enemies, buying the throne of the Pope, and turning the church into a weapon. Imagine this: in the heart of Rome, where holiness was supposed to rule, a single family controlled wealth, armies, secrets, and life itself. They didn't just want power, they wanted absolute power. Their name became a rumor that spread faster than soldiers. A dinner invitation could be a death sentence. A cup of wine could end a dynasty. And the most terrifying part? They weren't outsiders. They sat at the very top of Christianity. A Borgia became pope. His children became princes, and the city of Rome became their chessboard. So who were they really? Were they monsters hiding behind holy robes? Or were they simply the most honest face of Renaissance politics? Tonight, we uncover the shocking truth. This is the story of the Borgia family, the dynasty that turned faith into fear. Fact 1. They weren't even Italian. Fact number 1, the Borgias weren't even Italian. And in Renaissance Italy, that detail mattered more than you think. Because Italy at the time wasn't one united country. It was a battlefield of rival city-states: Rome, Florence, Venice, Naples, each one watching the others with suspicion. And in a world like that, being a foreigner didn't just make you different. It made you dangerous. The Borgia family originally came from Spain, from the region of Valencia. Their name wasn't even Borgia at first, it was Borja. But when they entered Italy, they changed it into something that sounded more Italian, more acceptable, more powerful. Still, no matter how many titles they gained, many Italians never truly accepted them. To their enemies, the Borgias were outsiders climbing into the heart of Rome, like a shadow moving inside a holy temple. People whispered that the Borgias didn't understand Italy's traditions. They didn't respect old noble families. They didn't belong, and that hatred became fuel. Because when a foreign family rises too fast, people don't just feel jealousy, they feel humiliation, they feel insulted, they feel threatened. So every victory the Borgias achieved created more enemies. Every new position they received created more gossip. And every step closer to power made Italy whisper one question: how far will these outsiders go to rule us? This is why the Borgia story is not just a story of corruption. It's also a story of identity and invasion. A family arriving as foreigners and slowly turning Rome into their kingdom. And that's the terrifying truth. Before the Borgias became a dynasty of fear, they were simply strangers in a land that never wanted them. Fact 2. Rodrigo Borgia bought the papacy. Fact number 2 is where the Borgia legend turns truly terrifying. Rodrigo Borgia didn't simply become pope. He was accused of buying the papacy. In the modern world, we imagine the pope as a spiritual leader. But in Renaissance Italy, the papacy was also something else. It was a throne. And whoever sat on that throne controlled armies, wealth, alliances, and the future of Europe. In the year 1492, Rome was not choosing a saint. Rome was choosing a ruler. When Pope Innocent VIII died, the most powerful men in the Catholic Church gathered for the conclave. They wore robes of holiness, but behind those doors they played politics like kings. Rodrigo Borgia entered that conclave with one advantage that few could match: money. He had been a cardinal for decades. He had influence. He had connections. And most importantly, he had the kind of wealth that could change decisions in silence. Many sources and enemies of the Borgias claim that Rodrigo used bribery to secure votes: land, gold, titles, favors. The currency of power was everywhere. This wasn't a simple election. It was a negotiation, a marketplace, a silent auction for the most powerful seat in Christianity. And when the voting ended, Rodrigo Borgia emerged as the winner. He took the name Pope Alexander VI, but his victory didn't feel holy. It felt calculated. Almost immediately, rumors exploded across Europe that the papacy had been sold, that Rome had been purchased like property, that the church was no longer guided by God, but by ambition. To some, Alexander VI was a scandal. To others, he was a genius. A man who understood that religion in the Renaissance was not just faith, it was power. And once he gained it, he used it like a weapon. He didn't rule like a monk. He ruled like a king. He gave positions to allies, removed enemies, and turned the Vatican into the center of political control. Under Alexander VI, the Holy See became a family empire in disguise. And that is why this fact matters so much. Because the Borgia rise was not built on prayer. It was built on strategy, on deals, on gold. So when people say the Borgias were corrupt, this is the moment they point to. The moment Rodrigo Borgia proved one terrifying truth about Renaissance Rome: even the most sacred throne on earth could be bought. Fact 3. A pope with children and no shame. Fact number 3 is the moment the Borgia story stops feeling like history and starts feeling like a scandal thriller. Because Pope Alexander VI had children. Not rumors, not secret whispers. Real children. And what shocked Europe even more was this: he didn't hide them. In theory, popes were supposed to live in strict celibacy. No wives, no lovers, no family bloodlines. The Pope was meant to be a spiritual father to all Christians, not a biological father building a dynasty. But Alexander VI treated the Vatican like a royal court. Before he became Pope, Rodrigo Borgia had a long relationship with a woman named Vannozza de Catanei, and together they had several children. Among them were two names that would become legendary: Cesare Borgia and Lucrezia Borgia. And once Rodrigo became Pope, everything changed. Most leaders would have hidden their children to avoid scandal. Alexander did the opposite. He promoted them. He protected them. He raised them like princes of Rome. Because Alexander VI didn't see the papacy as a spiritual duty, he saw it as an empire, and every empire needs heirs. So Cesare wasn't just his son, Cesare became his weapon. Lucrezia wasn't just his daughter. Lucrezia became his diplomatic key, used in marriages and alliances to bind powerful families to the Borgias. The Vatican became something unthinkable, a holy palace ruled like a family business. And Europe watched in horror, because people could forgive corruption. They could even forgive bribery. But a pope openly turning the church into a dynasty? That was beyond scandal. It was a nightmare. Enemies began to whisper the most toxic rumors imaginable, that the Borgias were not just corrupt, but immoral beyond limits. Some even accused the family of incest. Others said the Pope's children were involved in murders and poisonings. Not all of these accusations can be proven, but the damage was done. The image of the Borgia Pope became legendary, a man wearing the holiest crown in Christianity, while building a bloodline like a king. And this is why Fact 3 matters, because the Borgias didn't just break rules. They destroyed the illusion that the church was pure. They showed the world that in Renaissance Rome, even holiness could become politics. And the moment Alexander VI raised his children into power, he sent a message to the world. The Vatican is not just a church, it is a throne, and my family will sit on it. Fact 4. Cesare Borgia, the Prince of Violence. Fact number 4 is the reason the Borgia name became a nightmare across Italy, because this is where the family stopped being just political and became military. This is the rise of Cesare Borgia, a man who didn't inherit power. He took it. At first, Cesare was meant to be a man of the church. He was educated, polished, and pushed into religious life. In fact, he even became a cardinal. But Cesare didn't want a life of prayer. He wanted control. And when the moment came, he did something almost unthinkable. He removed his red cardinal robes and replaced them with armor. Now imagine that in Renaissance Europe, a cardinal turning into a warlord. That alone was a message. Rules don't apply to us. With his father, Pope Alexander VI, behind him, Cesare became more than a son. He became the Pope's weapon, sent to carve out a Borgia empire across central Italy. But Cesare wasn't simply a soldier. He was calculated. He didn't fight like a knight chasing glory. He fought like a predator chasing territory. He used bribery when it was cheaper than blood. He used intimidation when it was faster than negotiation. And when needed, he used violence with shocking precision. Cities began to fall one by one. Local rulers suddenly faced impossible choices: submit or be destroyed. And what made Cesare truly dangerous wasn't only his army, it was his mind. Cesare understood fear. He understood that one brutal example could save 100 battles. So he built a reputation that spread faster than his soldiers. A reputation so terrifying that sometimes cities surrendered before he even arrived. This is why many historians believe Cesare inspired Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli personally observed Cesare. He watched his strategy, he watched his cruelty. And later, in The Prince, Machiavelli described the kind of ruler who does anything necessary to secure power. Cesare Borgia became the living model of that idea, a ruler who doesn't ask, is it moral? A ruler who asks, will it work? One of Cesare's most infamous moments came when he dealt with his own allies. He invited rival commanders and enemies to a meeting, promising peace. They arrived believing they were safe. They were arrested, and many were executed. Cesare taught Italy a brutal lesson. In his world, trust was a trap. And yet, despite all his victories, Cesare's story is tragic, because his power was built on one foundation: his father, the Pope. And the moment Alexander VI died, the empire Cesare built began to collapse like a castle of sand. But even in defeat, Cesare left something behind: a legend, a warning, because Cesare Borgia proved one terrifying truth. In the Renaissance, power did not belong to the righteous, it belonged to the ruthless. Fact 5. They used the church as a weapon. Fact number 5. The Borgias didn't just control the church, they weaponized it. Under Pope Alexander VI, religion wasn't only about faith, it was about power. He rewarded loyal families with high church positions, titles, and wealth. And if someone stood against the Borgias, Alexander had the most terrifying weapon of all: excommunication. With one decision, an enemy could be labeled a sinner, stripped of allies, and politically destroyed. In Renaissance Italy, that was like erasing someone from society. So the Borgias ruled like this, not only with armies and gold, but with fear disguised as holiness. They turned the Vatican into a political throne and used God's authority to crush human rivals. Fact 6. Lucrezia Borgia, villain or victim? Fact number 6. Lucrezia Borgia became one of the most misunderstood women in history. For centuries, her name has been treated like a warning, almost like a curse. People called her a poisoner, a seductress, a manipulator hiding behind beauty. Some rumors went even further, accusing her of incest, betrayal, and secret murders. And the truth is, these stories spread because Italy needed a villain, and the Borgias were already hated. But when you look closer, a different picture appears. Lucrezia was born into a family where power mattered more than love. She didn't choose the Borgia name, she inherited it. And from a young age, she became a tool of politics. Her father, Pope Alexander VI, and her brother Cesare used her marriages like weapons. She was married and remarried to secure alliances, to silence enemies, to turn rival families into prisoners of diplomacy. In public, she was dressed like a princess, but in reality, she was living inside a cage made of power. Many historians today believe Lucrezia was less a mastermind and more a victim of the Borgia machine. Yes, she was intelligent. Yes, she understood politics. But that doesn't mean she controlled it, because in Renaissance Italy, powerful women were rarely allowed to rule openly. Instead, they were blamed for the sins of men, and Lucrezia became the perfect target. Her name survived not because she was proven guilty, but because scandal is louder than truth. So fact 6 is haunting. Lucrezia Borgia may not be history's greatest villain. She may be history's greatest pawn. A woman forced to carry the darkness of her family on her shoulders. Fact 7. The poison rumors made them immortal. Fact number 7. The Borgias became immortal because of poison rumors. Even today, when people hear the name Borgia, they think of secret dinners, silent smiles, and deadly wine. Their enemies claim the family used a famous poison called cantarella, a substance so deadly that it could kill quietly, leaving almost no trace. Whether this poison truly existed or not, the rumor alone was enough to terrify Italy, because it meant danger could be hidden inside elegance. A friendly invitation could become a death sentence, and a single sip could erase a rival forever. That's why poison became the Borgia symbol, not just as a weapon, but as fear turned into legend. Fact 8. Their parties shocked Europe. Fact number 8. The Borgias didn't just rule Rome, they scandalized Europe. Under Pope Alexander VI, the Vatican wasn't only a religious center. To their enemies, it became a palace of luxury, bribery, and forbidden nights. Rome was already a city of whispers, but the Borgias turned those whispers into storms. People claimed that behind the holy walls there were feasts that looked more like royal celebrations than Christian gatherings. Gold everywhere, wine flowing without limits, music echoing through corridors that were supposed to be silent. And then came the most infamous rumor of all, a scandalous event later called the Banquet of Chestnuts. According to reports from enemies, it was a night of extreme decadence, a gathering filled with dancers, entertainment, and behavior that shocked even Renaissance standards. Now, historians debate how accurate this story truly is. Some say it was exaggerated propaganda designed to destroy the Borgias. Others believe something close to it happened. But here is what matters. The rumor became stronger than the truth because it perfectly matched the image people already had of the Borgias, a family that treated the Vatican like a playground of power. And once these stories spread across Europe, the damage was permanent. Even if half of it was false, the world remembered only one thing: that the Borgias blurred the line between holiness and corruption until no one could tell where faith ended and fear began. Fact 9. When the Pope died, everything collapsed. Fact number 9. The Borgia Empire collapsed almost overnight after Pope Alexander VI died. For years, their power seemed unstoppable because it was protected by the highest authority in Europe, the Pope himself. But in 1503, when Alexander VI suddenly died, the Borgias lost their shield. Allies turned into enemies. Rival families returned with revenge. And the Vatican, once their fortress, became a trap. Cesare Borgia, who had conquered cities and terrified Italy, was arrested and betrayed. His territories were taken back piece by piece, and the empire he built with fear fell apart in weeks. It proved one brutal truth: Borgia power wasn't permanent, it was borrowed. And once the Pope was gone, the dynasty began to die. Fact 10. They didn't disappear, they became a legend. Fact number 10. The Borgias never truly disappeared because their story became immortal. Even after their empire collapsed, the Borgia name survived across Europe through noble bloodlines, politics, and whispered fear. But their real power wasn't in land or armies anymore. It was in reputation. They became the symbol of a new kind of rule: power without limits, religion used as strategy, and family loyalty stronger than morality. That's why the Borgias still live today. Not in Rome's palaces, but in culture. Books, films, series, games, they all keep the legend alive. Because the Borgia story teaches one timeless lesson: in some eras, the throne doesn't belong to the pure, it belongs to the ruthless.